plane in the seconds before it crashed. Another source indicates to CNN that this possibility is certainly under investigation right now. The source says that's something that we're looking at, our source's words. Investigators say they'll get lots of help in their probe if and when they recover the black boxes. The cockpit voice recorder is expected to provide important clues as to what sounds were made during the last few minutes of the flight, plus a chance to hear what the crew was saying. The other box, the flight data recorder, will probably be able to tell investigators whether there was a fire, an explosion, or something else that caused the plane to go down. Lou, George?
All right, John Holloman in Washington.
Crews searching for clues, bodies, and survivors also are finding some personal effects in the waters off Long Island. Reminders of the people who were involved in this tragedy. Among those believed to have died, 16 students and their 5 adult chaperones. They were from a high school French club in a small Pennsylvania community. Friends and relatives of those on board Flight 800 have been gathering in Paris and in New York. Special trauma centers have been opened to give them counseling.
Some details about the Boeing 747-100, which entered service in 1970. The plane that went down off Long Island was 25 years old. The Boeing 747 can hold 452 passengers, fewer than half that many. 210 passengers were aboard Flight 800. Still ahead in our crash coverage, live reports on reaction from the White House, Paris, and Olympic security officials.
And we'll also talk with an eyewitness to the crash, a former FAA inspector and the mayor of that Pennsylvania borough so hard hit by this disaster.
But now let's check in with our colleague Bobby Batista, who's near the crash scene, about 10 miles from the crash scene at East Mauritius, New York. Bobby?
Lou, Joey, as you say, multiple Coast Guard units plus support and auxiliary craft and personnel continue to search the waters about 9 or 10 miles behind me for any signs of life, although all hopes are pretty much fading now that there are any survivors of this crash. 228 passengers, as you know, were on board TWA Flight 800, which was on its way to Paris from JFK when it went down last night. 104 bodies have been retrieved. 2 of those have been identified, we're told, and we'll try to update these figures for you in just a minute with the Coast Guard. And 10 of them have been tentatively identified. At a NTSB news conference just a short time ago, Lou, I think as you mentioned, officials said that this crash is being treated as an accident at this time because there's no other reason at this time to suspect anything else. And so the NTSB will remain in charge of the investigation. But New York Governor George Pataki indicated that the FBI is standing by to treat this as a potential crime scene should terrorism end up being the cause. As we say, the recovery of the victims is the #1 priority of this investigation right now. And joining us to comment a little bit on the search mission is Lieutenant Commander Jim McPherson of the U.S. Coast Guard. Lieutenant, are we right on those figures so far, and how goes the investigation?
That's correct. 104 bodies have been recovered so far. We have 400 Coast Guard men and women serving on 28 cutters. We have 8 helicopters up. We're searching as hard as we can, but things are not looking good right now.
What are the logistical problems that you have with an investigation like this? You have good weather, which is a plus, and the crash site itself is located right offshore, easy to reach. What are some of the logistical problems you have?
Well, every hour that we wait and every hour that we search, the search area expands. So now we're up to about 340 square miles. So that's a big area to search. And anytime you're searching out on the water, it's a hard task because we're picking up every single object that we see out there. So it's very time consuming.
And there is some concern, I think, that many of the objects or personal effects may wash ashore. If that is the case, what is the procedure?
Well, the Coast Guard's asking that nobody touch anything. They're supposed to call 911. The governor of New York has asked that. Everything is being treated for the state, so please leave everything alone. We don't want anyone to touch anything.
I know that I wanted to ask you about something earlier, as a matter of fact, that there was a viewer earlier who had asked me how this investigation differed from the value chat investigation. So I thought I'd pose that question to you. That was a tough one for me to answer, other than the obvious.
I mean, they're both really tough investigation, and it's tough on the crew. It's hard work. The crews are getting a little discouraged now, searching all night and all day, and the Coast Guard, our job is to save lives. So it's getting discouraging at this point that all they're doing is picking up bodies at this.
The Coast Guard was the first on the scene last night, was it not?
We had one cutter on scene within 15 minutes. The captain of the ship, the cutter ADAC, actually saw the fireball and saw the plane hit the water.
And did what then?
He was immediately on scene, and he became the on-scene commander and started the search. And he was the first one to make reports to the Coast Guard about what he saw. We knew we had a catastrophe on our hands right away.
There have been conflicting reports about the recovery of one of the black boxes. This may be a tough question for you, but I'll ask anyway. Congressman Forbes, a short time ago, insisted that one of the black boxes had been found. The FAA has denied that, and NTSB has not confirmed it either. Anything else you can say on that?
No, the Coast Guard doesn't have any information on the black box at this time. We are picking up debris. There's still a lot of debris out there, and we're collecting it on our cutters, and we'll bring it in shortly.
All right, Lieutenant Commander Jim McPherson, thanks very much. Lou, Joey, back to you.
All right, thanks, Bobby.
Of course, we'll hear from Bobby later from the scene as well. As we have been reporting, President Clinton is urging people not to jump to any conclusions about the cause of the aviation disaster, the claimed TWA Flight 800. At the same time, however, he has pledged the federal government is doing everything it can do to find out what happened. Let's go now to CNN senior White House correspondent Wolf Blitzer for more on the president's reaction. Wolf?
Joey, the president's also trying to comfort the families of those involved. He has either already telephoned or is about to telephone the mayor of Montoursville, Pennsylvania, to offer his personal sorrow. Montoursville, of course, is the hometown, the small town in Pennsylvania, where 16 teenagers lived, 16 teenagers and 5 adult chaperones who were aboard the TWA flight on the flight to Paris. This has been a sad day for the president and for the nation. At a previously scheduled White House ceremony, a visibly saddened President Clinton asked members of the Boys and Girls Nation to remember the children, the other passengers, and the crew members aboard TWA Flight 800.
So I'd like to ask you, before we begin the formal program today, to join me in a moment of silent prayer for those students, for the other victims, and for their families. Amen.
Earlier, he came into the White House briefing room to urge reporters and everyone else not to rush to judgment.
We do not know what caused this tragedy. I want to say that again. We do not know, as of this moment, what caused this tragedy.
But the president promised that the federal government's interagency task force, working with state and local authorities, will find out.
We will determine what happened. But for now, I want to caution again the American people against jumping to any conclusions and ask that today, overwhelmingly, our people remember the families of the people who were on that flight in their prayers.
Mr. Clinton recalled that the early speculation about Mideast terrorism being responsible for last year's Oklahoma City bombing proved to be wrong. And he said that various phone calls claiming responsibility for the TWA crash may also mean nothing.
Sometimes such calls are accurate, sometimes such calls are attempting to ride along on a tragedy. And therefore, I believe we should wait for the evidence.
Attorney General Janet Reno was cautious.
The FBI has been clear to stress that it's not prepared to state at this time that the incident is terrorist-related.
Prayer will be offered by the chaplain.
Our hearts, our thoughts, our prayers go out to the families of those whose lives were lost in the airplane tragedy of last evening.
And Republican presidential candidate Bob Dole also expressed his sorrow.
This is a sad day for all Americans, and all of us are praying for the families of everyone on TWA Flight 800. We must also keep our thoughts of those involved in the recovery effort in the hope they'll find the answers behind this terrible tragedy. And I'd ask that maybe we all observe a moment of silence.
So the search for the cause continues. In the meantime, aides say President Clinton is planning to resume his schedule as previously planned. That means he'll be on a flight tomorrow to Atlanta to open the Olympics. Joey?
Well, thanks very much. CNN senior White House correspondent Wolf Blitzer for us. Lou?
TWA Flight 800 was en route to Paris from New York when it exploded and plunged into the waters off Long Island last evening. CNN's Bill Delaney is at Charles de Gaulle Airport with the latest from there. Bill?
Well, Lou, operations here at Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris are normal. Security is tight, but airport officials here stress security here is always tight. An extraordinary and traumatic day here, though. 40 of the passengers were French. Dozens of people had gathered here this morning for the expected 8:15 a.m. arrival of TWA Flight 800. Now, CNN's Paris bureau chief, Peter Humey, was here from early in the morning as airport officials tried to cope with the tragedy.
French authorities did what they could, shielded from the media family members, mostly French, of the victims of TWA 800, received medical and psychological support in an emergency center hastily set up in Terminal 1 of Charles de Gaulle Airport near Paris. An expert in dealing with tragedy told us that relatives will naturally face some extremely difficult moments.
When you can see the body of somebody who is dead, it's easier to accept the death. When it's not possible to see the body, the death is not accepted.
Just a few hundred yards away, there were long queues of passengers waiting to board another TWA flight, this one heading for New York.
And I'm still caught up with the Oklahoma City bomb experience of last year, and I don't look forward to another one.
I'm nervous, very nervous, about, I don't know.
Security measures were tight. Officials here nervous at being filmed. Details of passengers on the plane filtered through only slowly, but one doctor at the emergency medical center said that of the victims, about 40 are believed to be French nationals. Elsewhere, a control room manned by airport officials and volunteers from several airlines fielded calls and provided information where possible.
We have to deal with the people. But before we pick up the phone and call any Mr. Doe anywhere, we've got to make sure that we have the right person.
Government officials also visited the emergency center. French Secretary of State for Transport, Anne-Marie Idrac, was amongst those fully briefed on the measures set in place. But despite a sense of shock and disbelief at what happened, by early afternoon it was almost back to business as normal here at what is one of Europe's busiest international airports. Peter Humey, CNN, at Charles de Gaulle Airport near Paris.
Well, so far as we know, Lou, by now, anyone who came to greet the plane this morning has by now gone back home. As I want to stress again, Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris, completely normal operations for anyone planning to fly in and out of here today, or tonight, or tomorrow. Lou?
All right, Bill Delaney near Paris. We would like to remind you, of course, Inside Politics, normally seen at this time, is not being seen today because of our continuing comprehensive coverage of the disaster involving TWA Flight 800. We'll continue with more of that in just a moment.
Do you need to make a quick call? Use 1-800-CALL-ATT. It's speedy, it's easy, and it always costs less than MCI's 1-800-COLLECT.
Where are you? Where no dude's ever gone before, Dad. That's my boy.
I'm not trying to be bossy, but if you use 1-800-CALL-ATT, you'll save some money.
I will not raise taxes on the middle class.
We heard this a lot.
We got to give middle class tax relief no matter what else we do.
6 months later, he gave us the largest tax increase in history. Higher income taxes, increased taxes on Social Security benefits, more payroll taxes. Under Clinton, the typical American family now pays over $1,500 more in federal taxes. A big price to pay for his broken promise. Tell President Clinton you can't afford higher taxes for more wasteful spending.
Computers in Silicon Valley have a model number on them, and that's it. At Gateway 2000, our custom-built computers are treated a little differently. That's because every system we build has a name attached.
Connie Kramer, Connie from New Jersey. This is your computer, and it's on television.
Gateway computers feature the Intel Pentium processor. And the only way to get them is to call 1-800-GATEWAY. You get a friend in the business, give us a call.
Send your package in 2 days with FedEx, and people are impressed. Cost, about $12.
Send your package in 2 days with UPS, and people are impressed. Cost, about $6. Send your package in 2 to 3 days with priority mail from the U.S. Postal Service, and people are impressed. Cost $3.
So, 12, 6, 3, what's your priority? Priority mail from the U.S. Postal Service.
Tonight, Flight 800 in the crossfire. What caused the TWA jumbo jet to fall from the sky in flames? Could anything have been done to prevent it? Join Press and Sununu tonight, 7:30 Eastern on CNN.
Well, our reporting of the TWA disaster is the second time within 2.5 months that we reported the crash of a domestic airliner with heavy loss of life. To help us better understand the investigation in this current disaster, James Burnley, Transportation Secretary when Pan Am Flight 103 went down in Lockerbie, Scotland, joins us now from our Washington Bureau. Mr. Burnley, thanks for joining us. The problem with water, we went through some agonizing moments in covering the search and rescue effort in the ValueJet crash. How is this current disaster similar or different from that operation?
Well, anytime you have a plane go down over water, it makes it extremely difficult for the recovery crews both to recover the bodies of those who have died as well as the debris. And as we saw in the ValueJet crash, it took quite a few days and a very extensive and elaborate operation. And when all was said and done, I think they would be the rescuers and recovery teams would be the first to admit they had a lot of debris they simply were not able to recover. Nonetheless, in a situation like this, I think that we can have a good deal of confidence that they will be able to recover not only the voice cockpit recorder, but the data recorder, the so-called black boxes, and probably most of the aircraft will eventually be recovered.
Why do you have that confidence?
Well, the techniques that are available now are such that even in relatively deep water, we have with robotics and what have you, the ability to eventually recover most of the debris. And what will happen is that the NTSB, working with the FAA, will try to reconstruct this airplane in a hangar. And then we'll analyze the debris to determine what caused the catastrophe.
Is there any doubt in your mind that there will never be any discovery as to what caused this crash?
Well, who can say? I mean, one of the things that troubles me about the coverage in the last few hours has been that there have been some people rushing to judgment about the cause. And the one thing that we know this afternoon is that we don't know. We can't know. We will not know tomorrow. However, recent history has taught us that over the next few weeks or even couple of months, we will begin to get answers, and they may not be absolutely definitive, but they will probably be pretty close to the truth. It does, though, I think, bear saying that right now, a lot of the speculation is completely without factual foundation. It may be that some weeks from now it will turn out that one of the people speculating today hit the mark, but that will be like throwing a dart at the dartboard. We have no information right now upon which you can intelligently speculate other than that we had a terrible catastrophe.
We had a report earlier on today about how government agencies from the president on down have been quite reticent on just the subject that you have mentioned. The president saying it's too early to jump to conclusions. Let's leave our thoughts and prayers with the victims' families and leave it up to the investigators. There was a representative from East Mauritius, New York, who came out and said we're becoming increasingly uneasy about the cause of the crash, and later came back and said let's not jump to conclusions. So I think that perhaps government agencies are taking another look at this early theorizing.
Well, the early theorizing has been largely people who've gotten on television, and I want to use my opportunity this afternoon just to say that I hope that people who have a temptation to indulge in that kind of speculation will resist the temptation, because they don't know. I don't care what their backgrounds are, I don't care what their purported expertise is, they don't know. And it is really, I think, irresponsible, it's happened within an hour or so of the crash last night, to have someone on national television making definitive statements that this was a bomb. I have no earthly idea, and I'm sure that gentleman had no earthly idea when he made that statement, what caused this catastrophe. Again, with Pan Am 103, it took us nearly a month to determine the cause of that crash, even to the point where we had a fair degree of confidence. It wasn't absolute. We ultimately saw that we had absolute confidence in knowing what had happened there, but it just takes a while, and we all have to be patient.
And we know this is going to take quite some time because, as we heard in an early report, 340 square miles of area now is being taken into account as far as looking for the wreckage.
Yes, and again, I don't anticipate that we will see the recovery teams find every single piece so they can perfectly reconstruct the plane, but I do anticipate that they will be able to recover most of the plane over the next few days and even weeks, and that we will, if we are patient, we will know within a few weeks or a month or two what happened here to a fair degree of certainty.
All right, thanks for helping us out. James Burnley, former Transportation Secretary. Thank you very much. Did the crash of the TWA jetliner heighten security concerns in Atlanta on the eve of the Olympics? We will look into that when we come back.
Hi, Mr. Radical Extreme Man, jumping out of planes and twirling around. You got a minute to call your mom and let her know you're okay? Or is that too much to ask? Come on, call or collect. Use 1-800-CALL-APT. It's speedy, it's easy, and it always costs less than MCI's 1-800-COLLECT.
Yes. Hi, Dad. Just want to let Mom know I'm okay.
Okie dokie. I'll tell her.
Marge! Troy's okay!
That's so I stand. I'm not trying to be bossy, but if you use 1-800-CALL-APT, you'll save some money.
According to Mutual Funds magazine, tough guys finish first. The fund industry's toughest portfolio managers, Lawrence Oriana and Hans Utsch, have made the Kaufman Fund the #1 fund since the market low of December 4th, 1987. The fund invests in small companies with substantial growth prospects. The Kaufman Fund was awarded Morningstar's highest 5-star rating. Call now for your prospectus, 800-824-0600. The Kaufman Fund, 800-824-0600.
When I got rid of my gray hair, I wanted a natural look, so I didn't take any chances. I used the sure thing for a natural look, called Just for Men.
Apply Just for Men, and in 5 minutes, rinse. It's specially timed to blend away gray, bring back your natural look, and condition hair.
It's a sure thing.
Just for Men, the sure thing for a natural look. And now try Just for Men Color Gel for the hard-to-color hair of mustaches and beards. Brush in, rinse out. Just 5 minutes.
Got something different for your sensitive teeth.
Well, you can take it back. My dentist wants me to use Sensodyne.
This is Sensodyne. Sensodyne with baking soda.
No pain. My mouth feels fresh and clean.
Sensodyne with baking soda. All you feel is fresh and clean.
When you choose to cruise, call 1-800-TAKE-OFF and save up to 50% off on selected sailings. At 1-800-TAKE-OFF, your cruise purchase is fully insured. Call 1-800-TAKEOFF.
Security is a concern, especially during the Olympics in general. Certainly, this is early on with this situation, and there's nothing to suggest that there is any kind of correlation between the crash and the Olympic Games at this point.
As Chief Harvard says, security against terrorism has been a big concern in Atlanta, where opening ceremonies for the Olympics are scheduled for tomorrow night. CNN's Yolanda Gaskins has been checking on security at the Olympic venues, and she joins us now. Yolanda?
Hi, Joey. Well, I've spent the entire day here at Nike Park, which is right next to Olympic Park, talking to people about what happened with TWA Flight 800. As you said, the opening ceremonies are just one day away, and you can really start to feel the security tighten in Atlanta.
Downtown Atlanta is experiencing a security plan that's going full throttle. Street traffic is now moving a lot slower as the city's street closing plan goes into effect. Only those lucky ones with the right credentials can get through these checkpoints. Drivers have another kind of wait in store, a thorough search by police that leaves few corners or fenders left unchecked. Almost every nook and cranny that we can see seems to be subject to one type of security or another, and that presence is making a big impression on everyone.
Well, you see the police with the guns, and that makes you feel good. So, but they're around. So, but I know there's a lot of undercover people too.
I think security needs to be as high as it possibly can be. It might be a real hassle to get in and out of things, but hey, I don't care. I've got a husband that's working here. I don't want to take any chances with my family or with anybody else that's here.
And a lot of people felt that same way, Joey. Also, earlier, Mayor Bill Campbell was talking about, in reaction to what happened with Flight 800, that's already tightened security in Atlanta. He said that they would review the security and tighten it even further if need be. Joey?
All right, Yolanda, thanks very much. Yolanda Gaskins reporting to us from the Olympic Park. And CNN's comprehensive coverage of the crash of TWA Flight 800 will continue. First, though, let's check in New York with Beverly Shook there for a financial news update. Beverly?
Thanks, Joey. When Alan Greenspan speaks, financial markets listen, and that's just what happened today as the Federal Reserve Chairman's comments sparked a major rally in both stocks and bond markets. In his semi-annual testimony before Congress, Chairman Greenspan said the central bank will remain tough on inflation and hike interest rates if needed. But Greenspan says the Fed has yet to see early signs of rising prices.
I am confident that the Federal Open Market Committee would move to tighten reserve market conditions should the weight of incoming evidence persuasively suggest an oncoming intensification of inflation pressures that would jeopardize the durability of the economic expansion.
Greenspan also indicated that he's in no hurry to raise short-term interest rates. Greenspan's comments were just what weary investors wanted to hear. The Dow Jones Industrial surging 87 points, ending the day at 54.64. The Dow rose 30 points in the minutes after Greenspan's written comments were made available to the press. The Nasdaq racking up strong gains for the second day in a row, rising 23 points. Other broad market indices also posting solid gains today. In the bond market, the 30-year Treasury jumping 1 6/32 of a point in price, taking the yield down to 6.91%. The nation's trade deficit in goods and services rising more than 13% in May. The U.S. trade deficit deteriorated in May. It was $9.6 billion in April, $10.8 billion in May. That did include an improvement on the export side of 1%, but an even larger increase in imports of 2.6%, which reflects strength in the U.S. economy. The trade gap was the highest since January of 1992. Earnings season continuing in full swing, and among the blue...
Two more questions are being asked in the wake of Flight 800's crash. Will it force a tightening of security nationwide? And how do passengers flying today feel about airline safety? Elaine Murphy of affiliate KTW in Portland went to that airport where travelers have mixed feelings about flying.
As of this time, no changes in security have been ordered by the FAA, and none have been taken here at Portland International Airport. It's quite a busy airport today. If you look behind me, the TWA counter is empty at this point, but it was filled earlier, people flying TWA. If you look just beyond, you can see the crowd there at the Southwest Airlines counter. A number of people are flying today, as we said, and today passengers say they have some mixed feelings about flying.
As much as I fly, I don't, it doesn't bother me. I mean, I feel badly about what happened, but, it's not going to stop me from flying.
Plane crashes and things that have been happening, most of those flights seem to have originated from outside the United States, and flying domestically, I feel pretty safe with the kids.
If you were flying to Europe today, would it be another matter?
We would not be flying to Europe.
There's still a high level of security as far as the airlines are concerned and the airport's concerned. And so people should be cognizant that that's going on and that security is in no way lax.
Airlines still require photo ID when passengers check in, and security gates inside check the carry-ons and the passengers themselves. Now, these measures are taken not by the airport, but by the airlines. They contract with security systems companies who provide the service. We asked airport officials about how the baggage is handled, and that, too, is handled by the airlines themselves. All the airlines contacted today declined to answer any questions about baggage, so baggage definitely is a very sensitive issue today. In Portland, Elaine Murphy for Northwest Cable News.
And do stay with us here on Northwest Cable News for continuing coverage. This story is changing hourly and developing very quickly, and we will update you as soon as we get any new information into the newsroom. What can one say when it's 60 degrees and raining on July 18th? Our meteorologist will try to put this into words next. No longer...
Closely, and from all I can find out, those problems were taken care of. Many of the pylon bolts were replaced. Others, I believe they all had to be inspected.
Well, tell us a little bit. I mean, what is a pylon and what is a pylon bolt and what happened?
Well, basically the pylon is what connects the engine to the underneath side of the wing. And there's only 3 bolts, basically speaking, that hold that pylon to the engine. And for whatever reason, they did have, as you mentioned, 2 failures at least that I know of.
And you also believe that that problem has been resolved?
Yes, I do.
Any thing come to your mind when you heard about this incident, or what did you think of it?
Well, I thought of it just as a tragic accident, tried to not make any predictions as to what it could have been, any one of a number of things. And I think we're all best to wait until we can see the evidence later on of what might have caused it. It will all come out.
All right. Lloyd Tincher, thank you very much for helping us, former Air Force pilot and former inspector on these 747s from San Francisco. Joey.
All right, we've often heard in these situations where an airplane has gone down about the importance of the black box, the flight data recorder, and, of course, the cockpit voice recorders. Those boxes are not, in fact, black. They are, in fact, orange. Joining us now, Greg Francois, who is with the Allied Signal Aerospace Company. Greg's company does put together those black boxes, as they are called. We welcome you to the program. Can you tell us a little bit more about these things? I mean, we hear so much about these black boxes, but what could they really tell us?
Well, basically, there's two of these so-called black boxes on an aircraft. One is the flight data recorder, which basically records the main parameters of the aircraft, altitude, airspeed, heading, what the pilot's doing, engine thrust, and that sort of thing. And the other is what's known as a cockpit voice recorder, which records the ambient noise in the cockpit. There's what's called an area microphone that picks up all the noise in the cockpit.
And that's the thing that we most often hear about afterwards. We'll get the transcript at some point, maybe a recording of the voice of the cockpit. That is both the pilot, co-pilot, others in the cockpit?
Right. There's an area microphone that picks up everything in the cockpit, and as well as the headsets, the pilot, co-pilot, and flight engineer. Those signals would also be picked up.
Greg, I understand that you have brought with you today to the studio there in Seattle an example of both the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder?
Yeah, that's right. We've got two of them over here. This is the flight data recorder. This is similar to what would be on that TWA airplane. This is a tape recorder. This is the part that has to survive the crash. The rest is electronics. And this is one of our newer cockpit voice recorders, but it's similar in size to what it's the same kind of box size that the cockpit voice recorder would have been on that TWA airplane.
Now, you had said that the one of those recorders is an older model. You think that that is the type from that variety of this age of aircraft is likely to be on board?
Yeah, that's correct. It's hard to say because a lot of the newer technology boxes are interchangeable with the older ones, so it's up to the airline. They can switch them around as they will, since they'll fit in that aircraft.
I'm assuming that if you have a newer model of the thing, it is probably better equipped in some way. Why wouldn't all airline companies go ahead and put the retrofit the flight data recorder, the cockpit voice recorder, if these are such important pieces of equipment?
It's always more of a cost issue. Obviously, a lot of airlines have, because the main feature of the newer recorders, they're much more reliable and much more dependable than the older types of recorders. So that's our big push to the airlines, for them to do that.
Would you think that there would be any compromise to the safety or the ability of investigators to find out exactly what happened if they don't use the most advanced models of recorder available?
Obviously, the higher reliability unit would be the better one to have on the airplane in case of an incident like this.
Now, let me get this straight. You're talking about these two pieces of equipment. They don't look very big. You're talking about, in this particular case, a plane that went down. There was some sort of explosion. There's a great deal of fire. It is down in 100 and some odd feet of water. How likely is it that these things are going to survive fully intact in some usable way?
Actually, fairly likely. These are installed in the tail of the aircraft, usually where there's not a lot of fuel back there. And the impact forces are not as great as you'd think. These boxes have a lot of testing that they're qualified to make sure they can withstand that kind of crash. And when they go underwater, there's a underwater locator beacon attached to the front that emits a sonar signal that the investigation crew picks up on to try to locate the recorders.
So this sonar signal is a thing that goes off just when it hits the water?
That's correct. The water actually surrounds it to complete the circuit that allows the pinger to start.
Can you give us with some degree of understanding how guaranteed it is that this thing is going to go off just because the machine hits the water? I mean, seems like a bit of a risk.
Well, there's some of it, but once it gets down the water, it should go off. These pingers themselves are also certified to certain standards as well to be able to go on this equipment.
How much depth of water can the machine survive in? How much pressure? How much fire?
Well, for the pressure, actually, the new recorders have to meet 20,000 feet deep sea pressure requirement. And the fire test on the older recorders is 1,100 degrees centigrade, which is 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit fire for 30 minutes. And the newer recorders are similar, except that period is being extended to 1 hour.
And then when you talk about the information that investigators will be able to get from the boxes, you had referred to the voices in the cockpit, but for how long? For the entire duration of the flight?
For the cockpit voice recorder, it's only for the last 30 minutes. So it's the last continuous 30 minutes of cockpit audio is recorded. For the flight data recorder, it's 25 hours.
You believe that this is the kind of information that is really going to make a difference in this particular case if the investigators can, in fact, find the boxes? Do you believe that this is the thing that is going to tell us once and for all for certain whether there was a bomb on board or whether there was some horrible other accident?
Well, that's not my field of expertise. It certainly will help, but I can't say for sure that it will be a final conclusion.
Well, we hope that they are found soon. Greg Francois, the Allied Signal Aerospace representative, speaking with us today from Seattle. Thank you very much for joining us with that information.
Thank you.
We will take a break here and return to more of CNN's continuing coverage of the events surrounding the tragedy of TWA Flight 800. Please stay with us.
Right. Hold it. This isn't you, it's an older guy.
Oh, that was before I got rid of my gray hair with Just for Men hair color.
Come on, that's too natural to be hair coloring.
Just for Men. Apply and in 5 minutes rinse. Gray is blended away for a totally natural look.
Think it'll work for me?
In 5 minutes.
Just for Men looks too natural to be hair coloring. And now try Just for Men Color Gel for the hard-to-color hair of mustaches and beards. Brush in, rinse out. Just 5 minutes.
As you've been hearing most of the day, the FBI is working with the National Transportation Safety Board on the investigation into the crash of TWA Flight 800. CNN's Peg Tyre has been taking a closer look at what the FBI is looking into, and what are they looking into, Peg?
Well, Lou, a team of federal agents has been dispatched to Kennedy Airport to talk to baggage handlers, caterers, people who've serviced the airplane. They want to find out who they are. They want to find out if they saw anything unusual before the flight took off. They've also set up a truck near the scene filled with lab equipment. They'll be running preliminary tests on human remains and plane fragments. They're looking for chemical byproducts of the explosion, and they're looking at the shape and condition of the fragments. A fragment that's dented indicates that it was some distance away from the site of the explosion. A fragment that is sheared indicates that it was close to what could have been ground zero. Lou?
The manifest, are they looking into that?
Well, they are looking at the manifest of the flights from Athens and from Kennedy. They're looking for what is known at TWA as selectees and high selectees. Selectees are people whose passports indicate they've traveled from Iran or Iraq. They're single females traveling alone. These people would have been stopped by TWA security folks. They would have been interviewed. Their baggage would have been taken apart. The electronic equipment they were carrying would have been extensively searched. They may not have been able to get on the flight. High selectees are, it's a sort of profiling system. High selectees are what TWA refers to as young Arab men, casually dressed, carrying a ticket that they bought in cash, one-way ticket. They bought not too long ago, maybe a same-day ticket. Those high selectees are usually not allowed to get on the flight. The FBI is very interested to know whether there were either selectees or high selectees on either of those flights from Athens or from Kennedy. Lou?
The purpose of that would be to determine if there was a hole in the security system somewhere along the line?
Well, they want to know if anyone who was of interest to them or will be of interest to them was trying to get on the flight. I would caution you, though, that no authorities that I've talked to are prepared to say that there was a bomb, and most of the federal agents I've talked to say to me that it would be irresponsible to engage in random speculation as to who is responsible, but they do look at everyone. They do look at especially people who might have tried to get on the flight, been turned away, or maybe people who
at the last minute decided that they weren't going to take this flight.
What else are they looking into, Peg? Wiretaps, etc.?
Yes, they're looking at something called signal intelligence, NSA and CIA telephone intercepts. They're looking into the possibility that information that they heard a week ago may look very different to them now in light of the explosion on Flight 800. Intelligence that may have seemed garbled, that may have seemed inconclusive, now may foreshadow something very sad. Lou?
All right, Peg Tire, following the FBI investigation in New York. National Transportation Safety Board officials say they have no evidence last night's explosion and fiery crash of the TWA Flight 800 was anything but an accident. They are investigating all possibilities, including terrorism, however.
The search does continue for the plane's black box flight and data recorders. The Coast Guard now says more than 120 bodies have been recovered in the waters off Long Island. We're now going to show you some pictures that we are getting. These are pictures apparently taken about a month ago. Raw pictures, and of course I can't tell you here what exactly is in them, but this appears to be at a hangar. These pictures were taken, videotape taken in the fall of 1994 of the particular plane that was involved. These pictures were taken in New York of that TWA plane. This plane is about 25 years old, but the 747 is considered by the airline industry to be a real workhorse, a very reliable plane. Of course, we're continuing to update you on the information, all the information that we can get about Flight 800. At this point, authorities are saying that all 228 people on board the flight, which was destined from New York to Paris, were killed.
The loved ones of the United States seeking information about the TWA crash and its victims can call this number, 1-800-438-9892. In Paris, the emergency information number, 331-4864-9832.
And that is the latest of the details we have now. Stay with CNN, though. We will continue our coverage of the crash of TWA Flight 800. And then please stay tuned at 8 p.m. this evening, Eastern Time. CNN will present a special Tragedy in the Sky. That'll be a one-hour special at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 o'clock on the Pacific Coast. And then at 9 p.m. Eastern, we are expecting a news conference from the NTSB with the latest details that officials in New York have been able to learn about what caused this horrible tragedy. For now, I'm Joey Chen.
And I'm Lou Waters.
Tonight, why did a TWA jumbo jet explode in midair? A one-hour special on the tragic story and the investigation. Tonight, 8 Eastern on CNN.
There's something heavy going down, so brace yourself for a blast. Heavyweight explosion. Boxing's big boys. All heavyweights. All the time. Holding nothing back. Slugfest between the biggest fighters on the planet. 2 hours that'll hit you like a ton of bricks. It's a star-making, earth-shaking, blasting zone. Heavyweight explosion.
Live at 6 on TCI pay-per-view. Order today.
Find spectacular savings at the sales event of the season. The biggest Hoover sale ever. Now at Stark's. The Hoover Steam Vac Deluxe. The easy-to-use deep cleaner with 5-brush agitator is only $229.60.
Mr. Kerry of Nebraska, aye. Mr. Shelby. Mr. Shelby, aye. Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown, aye. Yes, sir. She's my number one person. Okay. Thank you. Read the line. How old is she? 17. Great experience. You're a hero. Oh, my God.
Bobby Batista, who joins us from near the command center at the crash site.
Lou, that's one way of phrasing it. An eerie calm really exists at this media tent city off the coast of Long Island. The search and recovery mission, as you say, continues about 10 miles off my shoulder off the coast in Suffolk County here. It is still very much in the preliminary stages. Wreckage recovered earlier today off the surface of the water. The investigation now progressing to the diving stage and under the water. The recovery and identification of bodies goes on, as does the recovery of pieces of the aircraft of TWA Flight 800. 104 bodies. We were told in the last hour or so that number has not changed to our knowledge. 104 bodies have been retrieved at this time. 2 of them have been positively identified and 10 of them tentatively identified. The weather and the waters are extremely calm for investigators. This will still prove yet to be a very long night in the search for answers. We hope to have a report from CNN's Christine Negroni on this tragic flight. I don't know if we have that or not. Are we getting a thumbs up on that? No, we don't. All right. In the meantime, joining us on the phone is the Suffolk County Chief Medical Examiner. No, we don't have that either. Lou, back to you. We'll try to get those things for you in our search for information.
Okay, Bobby, I understand you've talked with some eyewitnesses. Is that correct?
Yeah, we did earlier. In fact, she was a guest on Talkback Live, and it was a woman who just happened to be looking up at the sky at the exact moment that Flight 800 exploded. And she was quite descriptive in saying that it was just a very loud explosion and this huge ball of flame, followed by a series of more explosions, and then very dark smoke with white smoke above it. And she was questioned by the FBI for several hours last night. They were interested in all of those sequences and all of her observations, you know, in their search as to whether or not this was an act of sabotage or terrorism. As you know, the NTSB is still handling this and treating it as an accident because there's nothing to suggest otherwise at this time. But the FBI is standing by to treat this as a potential crime scene if necessary.
Within hours this morning, Bobby, of the plane going down, you were making your connections to get to the crash site in New York, and I understand you flew TWA. What was the mood on board that flight?
That was a little bit unnerving, I have to tell you, to get on a TWA flight to JFK this morning. I did talk with the flight attendants quite a bit. One of them had been flying for 25 years, and she talked about how emotionally tough that is on all the employees of an airline when that happens, because she is sure to know people who were on Flight 800 working for as long as she had with the airline, and her children begged her not to get on a plane this morning. It was very tough on her family. The other flight attendant I spoke to was almost on Flight 800. She was trying to work a trade-off with another flight attendant to be on that flight, and the only reason she didn't get on that flight was because her computer at home went down. So she was breathing a huge sigh of relief this morning. CNN's Jeannie Most, we understand, is at JFK Airport now at this time. Jeannie?
Well, we are actually outside the Ramada Plaza Hotel on the edge of JFK, and I stress outside because they're being very careful about not letting any press inside the hotel where the families of some of the victims are. So there are lots of cameras waiting outside at the entrance. There are lots of police, but we are not getting inside to talk to the folks at all. Family members are being brought here to the grand ballroom, which they have apparently set up with tables and comfortable chairs and food. And there are also 17 mental health professionals who are circulating around that room. If the people want to talk to them, they can. If they don't want to, they don't have to, obviously. Now, all day long, we've been telling you about how Mayor Giuliani of New York has been bitterly criticizing TWA for the way it's been dealing with the families. Specifically, that TWA has not been allowing families access to the passenger list so that they could tell if their loved one was actually on board the plane. Well, now it's not just the mayor. That criticism is coming from other quarters as well. A New Jersey couple brought a 12-year-old French exchange student by the name of Ludovic Chanson to the airport last night, and they put him on Flight 800. He had been staying with them for about a month. It's the second year in a row that he's been an exchange student from France staying with these folks. They drove back to their home in Mendham, New Jersey after they put him on Flight 800. When they heard about the crash, they drove back. Now they're back in New York, and they are angry at the way TWA has handled it.
I think there are two tragedies here. The tragedy that, of course, occurred last night, but even a greater tragedy in that the way we, the families, have been treated by TWA. It is now 15 or 16 hours after the crash, and to the best of my knowledge, TWA still has not contacted the parents of that child in France. It was the good graces of the mayor who made arrangements to have someone from his office contact that family. I think this is a terrible, terrible mistake, and if it's an example of airlines trying to cut costs and not having a senior member of that airline here right now to help the family out with the processes in place to give us the answers that we deserve in order for us to communicate better with the families, I think that's a travesty.
Now, since Frank Capozza made those comments, the mayor of New York City, the governor of New York State, they have met with the president of TWA, Jeffrey Erickson, who actually flew into New York from London today. And at that meeting, the president of TWA assured the governor and the mayor that the passengers, relatives of the passengers, would have access to that passenger list. It's not going to be distributed in general until they've notified everyone, but that the relatives would have access to that list. So possibly that problem has been resolved. For the most part, as I mentioned, the relatives are staying inside the hotel. We did talk to one bus driver who is waiting here outside, waiting with the understanding that eventually he may be taking some of these family members out further on Long Island to perhaps view the bodies or perhaps get closer to the search site. I'm Jeannie Most, reporting live from JFK. Back to Lou.
All right, Jeannie, thanks very much. Joining us on the phone now is a call we tried to get earlier with the Suffolk County Chief Medical Examiner, Dr. Charles Wetley. Doctor, what is it that you can tell us about your investigation so far?
Well, so far we've recovered about 140 bodies, which are either here or en route here right now. We're using refrigerated trucks, and fortunately we've had a lot of planning, prior to this incident, disaster management planning, so to speak. So things so far for us have gone very smoothly as far as body recovery and keeping personal effects and so forth together to enable us to better and more easily identify the individuals. We have a team of dentists right now that have been feverishly x-raying a lot of people, and it's going to be kind of a slow process for a while because many of these younger people, especially teenagers, they have excellent dentition, but they haven't had a lot of fillings or anything else, and so they have to take an awful lot of x-rays, and so that's slowing us down to some degree. Right now, I think that what's important for the families to know is that of the cases we've seen so far, I think virtually every one of them died instantaneously. I don't think there was any prolonged suffering on the part of anybody in that particular plane crash.
As your investigation goes deeper, what is it that you'll be looking for in your examinations? Perhaps chemical residue or accelerants or...
Basically what we have to do is keep an open mind and think dirty about the whole thing. So naturally we're thinking about, the possibility of, a terrorist bombing, and so we want to see if there's any evidence of that. We want to see if there's any, what the impact forces are. Are they dying from drowning? Are they dying from impact? Are they dying from from the fireball? That type of thing. And it's just a matter of observing the various injury patterns of the individual and then putting them all together to try and make some sense out of the whole thing and create one large piece of a very complicated jigsaw puzzle.
A few minutes ago, we heard some accusations against the airline that they weren't communicating well with the families of the victims. Is there any medical reason why TWA has not been able to better that communication?
I wouldn't have the faintest idea about anything on that line. I would really rather not comment on that. But
I guess what I'm asking is, when you get the information that you get, does it go directly to the airline, or what's the process?
Well, the process basically is twofold. First of all, we have victims, and we therefore are gathering, identifying data: scars, marks, tattoos, surgical intervention, fingerprints, dental, and so forth. We, in turn, depend upon the families to say that, my relative was on that plane, and here are characteristics they had. They always wore a particular type of ring, for example. Something other than, what they have in their wallet. Now, the wallet in identification of the person gives us a good lead, but then we need something to corroborate that, and that's what the families have to provide for us. So what we basically need is for TWA and other interested parties to get this information from the families and convey it to us, and then we could match it up with the positive identifications and then release the bodies and the property to the next of kin.
All right, Dr. Charles Wetley, Suffolk County's Chief Medical Examiner, thanks very much for your information. Lou, back to you.
Okay, Bobby, we'll check with you again. As news of the crash reached the outside world, frantic family members rushed to the Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris, the scheduled destination point of TWA Flight 800. About 30 friends or relatives were whisked into private rooms where several doctors and nurses were waiting to comfort them. The airport's chief medical officer said about half of the survivors refused to believe the tragic news once it was confirmed, and experts say the days to come may not bring any additional comfort.
When you can see the body of somebody who is dead, it's easier to accept the death. When it's not possible to see the body, the death is not accepted.
Rudetsky heads up an organization that offers support for the relatives of terrorism victims, and we'll be back.
Same cars, same price, but one of them costs something.
It's not going to happen to us, and it just hits home, and then, you know, you're just sitting there one day and you find out 20 of your good friends just died in a plane crash.
Investigators collect the wreckage and try to answer the looming question, what caused the crash?
We will determine what happened. But for now, I want to caution again the American people against jumping to any conclusions.
Hello, everyone, from CNN Center in Atlanta. I'm Lyndon Soles.
And I'm Judy Woodruff. For the next hour, we will focus on the crash of TWA Flight 800.
We will be bringing you the very latest information on the crash, including these live reports.
I'm Bernard Shaw in East Mauritius, Long Island. The search continues for wreckage, bodies, and the voice data recorder from TWA Flight 800. The operation is being conducted nearby at the command post.
I'm Paul Karen. The families of the victims say TWA should have done a better job with the families after the crash. I'll have a live update.
I'm Mark Watts. A central Pennsylvania town mourns the loss of 21 of its residents. A live report coming up from Montoursville, Pennsylvania.
I'm Frank Sesno in Washington. What could have caused this plane to crash? Theories, but no answers so far.
I'm Bill Delaney in Paris, where TWA Flight 800 never arrived, and all day family and friends tried to cope with the tragedy. I'll have a live report from Charles de Gaulle Airport.
I'm Art Harris. Will the TWA crash mean tighter security on the streets of Atlanta? I'll have a live report from inside the Olympic ring.
I'm Wolf Blitzer at the White House, and I'll have the latest on what President Clinton is doing about the crash of the TWA airliner.
All that coming up in this special report. First, a quick update on the crash, the investigation and recovery operation.
TWA now says 230 people were on board the plane. That includes 2 more passengers than reported earlier. The medical examiner says more than half of them, 140 bodies, have been recovered in the waters off Long Island, New York. That is where Flight 800 went down in flames last night after an explosion. There are no signs of any survivors. In Pennsylvania at this hour, a prayer vigil is being held for 21 of those believed dead, high school students and their chaperones on a French club trip to Paris.
At the crash scene, about 70% of the plane reportedly has been recovered. Still missing the black box voice and flight data recorders. Federal investigators say they have no evidence of terrorism at this point and are treating the crash as an accident. And TWA says there were no signs of trouble and apparently no threat against the airline before it exploded less than a half hour after takeoff. The Boeing 747 that crashed, seen here last fall, had no record of maintenance problems. And Flight 800's 2 captains each had about 30 years' experience.
More than 400 Coast Guard personnel are involved in the search operation. That continues in the waters off Long Island almost 24 hours after the crash. Our live coverage begins with Bernard Shaw, who is standing by near the crash site in East Moriches, New York. Bernie?
Working very, very hard, the United States Coast Guard says it is pushing its search effort into the night, a second night after a very long day of effort.
We do have an excellent area to search. We know exactly where it went in. We're right on the middle of that datum, that search area, so we're able to make the maximum possible effort during this search. We know where it crashed. We know how many people are aboard. We know how many we found. We're going to keep searching until there's no chance of finding anybody anymore. Before long, we were completely surrounded by debris. Once you got in the middle of it, it spread as far as the eye could see, literally. The water seemed very thick with oil and fuel. The smell was very heavy in the air. When we finally were just surrounded, all you could see was this debris scattered everywhere. It was pretty mind-boggling. Well, not trying to imagine, but just trying to make myself realize that there were still a lot of unrecovered bodies under the water, not far from where we were. That's a pretty unsettling thought, and it's really hard to make yourself believe that when you can't see it.
As soon as I heard about it, we figured we'd get together and see if we could go out there and rescue anybody. But pretty much obviously, there was no survivors. We picked up some debris and a couple of a tank, but I mean, it was like pretty much like a weed line of debris, just I would say at least a mile or two long. It was just looked like, I don't know, there was definitely no survivors.
Are getting a little discouraged now, searching all night and all day. Things are not looking good right now.
And the question being asked over and over, what could have possibly caused the explosion and crash of TWA Flight 800? CNN Washington Bureau Chief Frank Sesno now joins us with the latest. Frank?
Lyndon, we've been monitoring and following the situation all day. Nearly 24 hours after the crash, troubling questions, few conclusions. Throughout the day, investigators sifted through the debris and what few clues there were, from top to bottom, warning that much more must be done before there are definitive answers.
We do not know what caused this tragedy. I want to say that again. We do not know, as of this moment, what caused this tragedy.
According to aviation officials, as TWA Flight 800 climbed through 13,700 feet last night, its radar image disappeared. Its pilots had been in contact with air traffic control in Boston. There were no indications of anything unusual. Standard exchanges, says one source.
It is our understanding from the various traffic control centers and centers that were in radio contact with the flight that there were no non-routine transmissions from the flight whatsoever, and no indication of any problem until the flight disappeared and went silent.
Several officials familiar with the investigation say there are three principal scenarios that could explain the kind of explosion most eyewitnesses describe. One, an explosion on board the aircraft, a bomb or something like it, that triggered a bigger blast. The FBI will take the lead in the investigation if it points to sabotage or terrorism. Two, an extreme engine malfunction. One source recalled the Delta mishap, July 6th, when an engine fin flew off and sliced through the fuselage. There was no huge explosion, however. This theory is not favored. 3, an object of some sort hitting the plane, possibly a missile. U.S. officials are extremely cautious about this scenario, but confirmed that authorities are carefully reviewing radar images that tracked the plane in the minutes before the crash.
There have been questions and a great deal of speculation in the national and worldwide media concerning this accident. We want to be able to find out the facts.
Absent hard evidence, authorities are going out of their way to avoid speculation, saying they've drawn no hard conclusions from any of this and are urging others to follow suit. They recall Pan Am 103, blown up over Lockerbie, Scotland in 1988. It took a month of painstaking investigation to confirm it was a bomb. They recall the ValueJet crash. Officials rushed to defend the airline, but were quickly embarrassed by revelations of a series of maintenance problems. And they are sensitive about speculative talk, just as the Olympics are about to begin in Atlanta. The most important pieces of this puzzle, the plane's black boxes, which contain critical voice and data recordings. Investigators say the boxes should be retrievable. The water's no more than about 120 feet deep, they say. The boxes emit sonar pings driven by batteries designed to last at least 30 days. A couple of other things that have come to our attention in the last hour or so. Our producer over at the Pentagon, Chris Plant, reporting that Pentagon sources telling him that the radar records that we mentioned just a moment ago that were being examined to determine whether anything may have hit that airplane did indeed show some kind of mystery blip, but officials say that signal is typical of an electronic glitch commonly seen on radar, so apparently that theory, at least so far as we can tell from what we're being told from the Pentagon regarding the radar, is not traveling very far right now. And our correspondent Brian Barger reporting that the CIA counterterrorism unit is gearing up worldwide to determine whether there are any leads that they can pick up around the globe as the investigation intensifies on an international scale. I'm Frank Sesno in Washington. Linda?
Frank, thank you very much. TWA has gathered dozens of people who put loved ones onto that flight to Paris at a hotel near the JFK airport. CNN's Paul Caron joins us now live from JFK with the latest on the victims' families. Paul?
Good evening, Lyndon. TWA is providing free lodging and food for those family members of the victims here near JFK Airport. Our cameras are not allowed inside, obviously. They allow the family members some space in there, but I've been inside myself, and it's, of course, some incredibly gut-wrenching scenes of people grieving through this incredibly tough time for them and receiving this kind of news on such short notice. Of course, many tears are being shed, long hugs between friends and families, trying to sort out why this all had to happen. Red Cross counselors are on hand inside to help people grieve through this time. Now, some family members say TWA took too long and was too slow in getting information to family members after the crash. CNN's Jonathan Carl has more.
As the horror of TWA Flight 800 set in, attention turned to the families and friends of the victims.
Our task now is to honor the memory of our lost colleagues by caring for the families and for each other.
Emotions ran high at the JFK Airport Ramada Inn, where approximately 150 people awaited news about friends and family members who boarded the ill-fated flight. For Frank Capozza, the emotion was anger.
I think there are two tragedies here. The tragedy that, of course, occurred last night, but even a greater tragedy in that the way we, the families, have been treated by TWA.
Capozza and his family confronted the loss of Ludovic Shanston, a 12-year-old French exchange student who boarded the flight after spending a month with his family in Mendham, New Jersey.
It is now 15 or 16 hours after the crash, and to the best of my knowledge, TWA still has not contacted the parents of that child in France.
The airline's delay was the target of New York City Mayor Giuliani's wrath.
The upper management of TWA has been woefully inadequate in its response.
Meanwhile, the American Red Cross dispatched 17 mental health professionals to counsel the families.
What we're doing right now is just trying to provide as much information and clarity for each person and letting each person absorb the reality of the situation at their own pace.
The families also had frequent visits from New York City Governor George Pataki and Mayor Giuliani.
We can just give our prayers, give our sympathies, and give all the support that the city and state combined can do
to help these families through this tragedy.
No amount of counseling can change the unforgiving reality facing these families. For them, the horror is just beginning. They now face the tasks of identifying bodies, visiting the crash site, and adjusting to life without their loved ones. Jonathan Carl, CNN, New York.
TWA officials say they wanted to individually notify family members about the crash, and that's what has slowed the process in releasing the flight's manifest. Now, they hope the list of crew and passengers will be released possibly later this evening. Also, TWA officials say they did not directly receive any threats of security concerns regarding their airplanes and airlines. Also, NTSB officials have been here at the hotel and have briefed family members on what they know so far on this crash. Lyndon?
All right, CNN's Paul Caron at John F. Kennedy International Airport. Thank you. Judy?
One small community in Pennsylvania has been particularly hard hit by this tragedy. 16 students and 5 chaperones from a high school French club in Montoursville, Pennsylvania, are presumed dead. CNN's Mark Watts joins us now with the latest from there. Mark?
Judy, good evening once again. I'm live outside the high school, which has become sort of a makeshift crisis center. And at this hour, a prayer service is getting underway at the high school gymnasium behind me. Townspeople and students and parents and people even from outside this community have gathered together with clergy members to remember 21 people, of course, who embarked on that trip to France, a pleasure trip yesterday. By now, we all know how it ended up. The town hasn't been the same since.
Summer classes at Montoursville High were canceled Thursday, but students came to class anyway to learn how to cope with the tragic news.
I'm doing okay. I'm just worried about a lot of my friends. How many friends did you lose when you were 15 years old? No. This is 19 kids at our school now, so far this year, and it's not something that's easy to deal with.
Grief counselors were sent to the high school to help not just the students, but also parents and faculty as well.
There's no cookbook for this kind of thing. You can't go to a book on your shelf and read what to do. People just need to grieve. They need to let that emotion out in appropriate ways and just allow themselves to go to grieve through this terrible loss. And not only just a loss, but obviously a tragic loss.
16 students left Wednesday on what the principal described as the journey of their life. They had organized bake sales and car washes to pay for their trip to France. The students were accompanied by 5 adults, including their French teacher and her husband, and the mother and father of one of the students on the trip.
Just wanted to get an opportunity to travel and, live and breathe the French culture that they studied about for the last few years.
But they didn't make it. And some of their friends back home in the small central Pennsylvania town are in a daze.
We cry a little bit. We're still kind of shocked that we just can't believe everything that's happening. How do you normally deal with the death of a friend?
For a town of less than 5,000, it didn't take long for tragedy to touch nearly everybody.
Might not know these students personally, but I know maybe their grandparents and things like that. But it's very shocking in such a small town, and you don't have to go too far to see one another.
Total shock is what it was. We was watching the country music show last night, and they come on and said, and I didn't find out that the kids were from Montoursville until this morning, and it was like total disbelief.
What's the hardest part in all of this for you? Just knowing I'll never see them again.
And that's the painful lesson they wish they didn't have to learn.
The prayer service continues at this hour. Townspeople have turned to prayer and each other as they cope with their losses. Judy?
Thank you, Mark.
Well, there is much more to come on this special report.
We'll talk with some of the people who witnessed the tragedy in the sky.
We will also have a live report from the White House and hear what President Clinton has just had to say about the crash.
We'll have a live report from France on the reaction of families and friends of the victims.
How do you look out for someone you love? How do you shelter their dreams? How do you cherish their innocence? How do you guide them through life? How How do you watch over their travels?
How do you show them you care?
Thinking of you. Infinity.
American Express, how can I help you?
Mr. Carter, I have you booked on the next flight to Taipei.
Confirmed on that flight to New York.
If they were American Express traveler's checks, there'll be no problem.
That's no problem.
I'll have your medicine sent to your hotel right away.
Right now, you have just over 2,000 membership rewards points.
Maybe you'd like to speak to one of our financial advisors.
Financial advisor.
Talk to me about where you want to be when you retire.
I reserved 4 seats. Would there be anything else?
Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, American Express helps you do more.
Glamorous Hollywood? Not to me. For me, it's long hours and strange locations. Can't get slowed down by irregularity. My doctor says exercise, eat right. But sometimes a meal is whatever you can grab between takes. My doctor suggested Metamucil, the only leading brand with 100% natural fiber, like the fiber in healthy foods. Keeps me regular, gently, so I can give my usual award-winning performance.
Metamucil, the doctor's natural choice for regularity.
The road to owning a pre-owned luxury car is an anxious one. Will you be protected? Will you be treated well? One company gives the same care and service to its pre-owned customers as it does to owners of its new cars. Infinity. And the Infinity Total Ownership Experience. It's how you sleep well at night.
Thinking of you. Infinity.
President Clinton sent his condolences today to the families of those on board TWA Flight 800, and he is said to be keeping a close watch on developments. CNN senior White House correspondent Wolf Blitzer has been following the story this day. Wolf?
Judy, the president spent almost the entire day focused on the TWA explosion, trying to figure out what happened. But he and his aides say that will take time, and as a result, for now, the mystery continues.
These young people...
At a previously scheduled White House ceremony, a visibly saddened President Clinton asked members of the Boys and Girls Nation to remember the children, the other passengers, and the crew members aboard TWA Flight 800.
So I'd like to ask you, before we begin the formal program today, to join me in a moment of silent prayer for those students, for the other victims, and for their families. Amen.
Earlier, he came into the White House briefing room to urge reporters and everyone else not to rush to judgment.
We will determine what happened. But for now, I want to caution again the American people against jumping to any conclusions and ask that today, overwhelmingly, our people remember the families of the people who were on that flight in their prayers.
Mr. Clinton recalled that the early speculation about Mideast terrorism being responsible for last year's Oklahoma City bombing proved to be wrong. And he said that various phone calls claiming responsibility for the TWA crash may also mean nothing.
Sometimes such calls are accurate, sometimes such calls are attempting to ride along on a tragedy. And therefore, I believe we should wait for the evidence.
The White House says that so far there have been fewer claims of responsibility than normally follow these tragedies. The president met with his cabinet and heard Transportation Secretary Federico Pena appeal to everyone not to speculate, insisting the government still doesn't know what happened.
Prayer will be offered by the chaplain.
Our hearts, our thoughts, our prayers go out to the families of those whose lives were lost in the airplane tragedy of last evening.
On Capitol Hill, the House of Representatives opened with a prayer.
May your peace, O God, that passes all human understanding, be with the families and all who mourn, now and evermore. Amen.
So the search for the cause continues. In the meantime, aides say the president is not planning to revise his schedule. That means he'll travel Friday to Atlanta to open the Olympics. Judy?
Thank you, Wolf. Lyndon?
Joining us now with his insights on the crash of TWA Flight 800 is a former chairman of the National Transportation Safety Board, Carl Vogt. Mr. Vogt served as chairman from 1992 to 1994. He is now a transportation attorney. Mr. Vogt, thank you for joining us. We have all been very careful to avoid specific speculation on what may have caused this crash until the investigation proceeds further, but as you heard Frank Sesno mention, 3 scenarios are being looked at, either some sort of mechanical or engine failure on the plane itself, a bomb, or perhaps even the possibility of something externally striking the aircraft, such as a missile. How likely do you think that third scenario could possibly be?
Well, let me say at the outset that I certainly support the President's admonition not to speculate at this point. Anything is possible, and the Safety Board will be looking into all of those possibilities. Certainly there seems to be a possibility of a mid-air collision, but at this point there's really no evidence to point in any one of these 3 directions.
Something else that was raised earlier today on CNN by an aviation expert was an example of a 747 cargo plane in which one of the engine pylons, and that's the mount that connects the engine to the wing itself, had come loose and then smashed into another engine, and the plane then went down. Based on the descriptions you've heard of this the Flight 800's crash scenario, do you see any similarities there?
No, I don't. That was the El Al crash in Amsterdam of about 3 years ago. And there, the plane maintained flight for a half an hour or so after that happened until it lost all its hydraulic fluid, and then the pilots lost control of the aircraft. Here, the one characteristic that everyone seems to agree on is that there was a sudden, large, massive fire, and that's a very distinguishing characteristic from that prior accident.
All right. Based on your knowledge of the 747 aircraft, what would have been the fuel tank configuration in terms of how large an ignition there would have had to be to ignite the fuel that was on board the plane?
Well, that's a good question, and I don't really know the answer, except most of the fuel is in the wings. There may have been some fuselage fuel, but the prospect of igniting that fuel that rapidly certainly raises some very, very troubling questions about how this happened.
And obviously that will be examined much more closely with the recovery of the wreckage. About 70% of Flight 800 recovered so far. Carl Vogt, former chairman of the National Transportation Safety Board, thank you very much for joining us. We'll be back with more right after this break. Please stay with us.
You can...
I'm here as the chairman of LCI International to ask you to vote, but to vote for LCI International as your long-distance telephone company. This is a year you'll hear all kinds of promises. At LCI, we promise, and we will deliver something that is simple, fair, and inexpensive. You have the freedom to get away from the hidden charges, monthly fees, confusion of AT&T and MCI and Sprint. You have the freedom to choose a very different long-distance phone company.
We've known about ginkgo for a long time.
Ginkai has been repeatedly proven to improve memory and concentration because only Ginkai uses the proven ginkgo formula, LI 1370.
That's why Ginkai is part of our daily routine.
Verified in clinical studies, validated by independent researchers, proven to improve memory and concentration.
And that's something to think about.
When it comes to ginkgo, think Ginkai, new from the makers of Kwai.
It's the Internet made easy for everyone. Get the latest breaking news from CNN Interactive using AT&T WorldNet service, the Internet you'd expect from AT&T. You get technical support from real people all day, every day of the week. Plus, AT&T long-distance customers can get a great one-year trial offer. And start your multimedia adventure with CNN Interactive's worldwide coverage. To get your free Internet software, call 1-800-WorldNet now and ask for extension CNN.
Looks like you've been grinding a bit, Michael. That's great.
All right.
You know, at the Olympics, IBM has technologies from 10 different companies working together. They might be able to help you. Good. Now rinse.
Thanks, Harry.
special financing now available on any Rheem air conditioning system purchase.
When the second half of our CNN special on TWA Flight 800 continues, we will go live to Paris.
I can't change jobs without losing my health insurance. Robbie has asthma.
The Republican Congress wants to make sure workers who lose or change jobs keep their insurance, regardless of their medical condition. But liberal Democrats are blocking this common sense approach. And instead of giving people more choices, they still want government-run health care.
When are they going to learn? That's not what we need.
Write President Clinton and Senator Kennedy today. Tell them to support the Republicans' common sense health care reform.
The job needs 4 guys now, and the guys need all their equipment. You're working harder than ever. You need a truck that does too. Meet the all-new 1997 Ford F-150, the only full-size pickup with a standard super cab third door, 60/40 split rear bench, and standard dual airbags, plus a taller cab for more hat and boot room than ever. After all, the guys aren't getting any smaller. The new Ford F-150. Strength after strength after strength.
Tonight on Larry King Live, what caused TWA Flight 800 to explode? The latest on the crash and the investigation. Tonight, 9 Eastern on CNN.
Commuting traffic. There's only one thing to do.
One thing.
Leave your car home. Not every day. Just once a week will be a big help. Okay, that's the plan. Once a week, leave the car home and get to work some other way. Once a week, that's all. Once a week. Or more if you want. Do the smart thing once a week. Leave it home. This week on TCI Pay-Per-View, don't miss the critically acclaimed performances of Nicolas Cage and Elizabeth Shue in Leaving Las Vegas. Next, Burt Reynolds and Angie Dickinson are a charming but deeply twisted couple in The Maddening. Also this week, Robert De Niro and Sharon Stone are riding high with the mob in Casino. Then, Jean-Claude Van Damme is the only one who can save an arena full of fans from a terrorist bomb in sudden death. They're all in your living room this week on TCI Pay-Per-View. Call and order today.
Moneyline with Lou Dobbs. Weeknights, 7 Eastern on CNN.
A town where everybody knows everybody praised for 21 of its own aboard TWA Flight 800. Most of them teenagers prepared for the trip of a lifetime.
The fiery crash raises questions about Olympic security. Is Atlanta ready and safe?
And reflections on the grim images Americans are beholding as the world arrives on our doorstep. Welcome back to our special report on the TWA tragedy. I'm Judy Woodruff.
And I'm Lyndon Soles. Inside Politics won't be seen tonight, so we can bring you the latest on the crash. An update of the National Transportation Safety Board's investigation is due in about a half hour from now. At last word, federal officials said they had no evidence the plane's explosion and fiery crash off Long Island, New York last night was anything but an accident. And they were still searching for the plane's black boxes. The medical examiner says 140 bodies have been recovered, more than half of the people on board Flight 800. TWA has upped the number of people on board by 2 to a total of 230. All are believed dead. Residents of the small town, Pennsylvania town of Montoursville are holding a prayer vigil at this hour for members of a high school French club who were on board Flight 800. 16 students and 5 adult chaperones were heading for a 10-day trip in Paris. Also among the victims, Captains Ralph Snyder and Ralph Kevorkian, both pilots, had about 30 years of flight experience.
For hours after the crash, a board at Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris listed TWA Flight 800 as canceled. TWA and airport officials met relatives who arrived to greet loved ones aboard the flight and broke the news. CNN's Bill Delaney joins us now live from Paris, where he's been gathering information. Bill?
Well, Judy, TWA Flight 800 was supposed to arrive here in Paris at 8:15 this morning. At least 40 of the passengers are believed to have been French. Dozens planned to welcome the flight, then had to absorb the sudden, terrible realization it would never arrive. Now, CNN's Richard Blystone was here at Charles de Gaulle Airport throughout the day.
The full horror was slow to hit the destination. Charles de Gaulle Airport drowsed in the early morning until this terse announcement on the arrivals board, falling 228 lives short of the real story. Then came the friends and relatives, bewildered, unbelieving. Their lives overturned by the kind words of the team assembled to inform, calm, and comfort them. But without bodies, small comfort, said one of a group that helps terror victims.
When you can see the body of somebody who is dead, it's easier to accept the death. When it's not possible to see the body, the death is not accepted.
Some relatives stayed at the trauma center under sedation. Others almost fled the airport, as it became clearer that of around 40 French passengers, none would fly home alive.
Tenu des circonstances, vous me permettrez.
French President Jacques Chirac, visiting the Congo, sent deepest sympathy to the American people and said he knew one victim personally. Many knew another, a member of France's hockey team. Flight operations continued as usual at France's busiest airport, including 3 flights by TWA. Lines grew at check-in for Flight 803, retracing the route from Paris to New York. Authorities were leaving nothing to chance.
I'll be very glad when we cut down. I hope we'll all make it.
This man heading to his Long Island home not far from the crash.
You wonder why people do that to innocent people.
As the jumbo jet lifted off and headed for home, the language was all of shock and sadness and condolence. When the cause of the crash becomes clearer, the vocabulary will sharpen to blame and reprisal. Richard Blystone, CNN Paris.
Judy, airport officials here at Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris want to stress that despite the traumatic events of today, the tragic events of today, operations are normal here. Anyone planning to travel in or out of this airport should be able to count on that. Judy?
All right, CNN's Bill Delaney in Paris. Thanks. Lyndon?
Well, the fiery crash was seen by a number of eyewitnesses last night. You heard some of them throughout the evening here on CNN. Let's go back now to our colleague Bernard Shaw at East Moriches, Long Island, who is about to talk with another eyewitness. Bernie?
Lieutenant Colonel William Stratmeyer is the vice commander of the 106 Air Rescue of the New York Air National Guard. And by my watch, Colonel, exactly 62 minutes ago, exactly 24 hours, with 2 minutes to spare, you were airborne in a C-130. You were piloting it. What did you see?
Well, we saw 2 large fireballs descending from the sky. We would estimate about 4,000 feet, plummeting right towards the ocean. Very large in diameter and orange in color, like a meteor, if you will, but much larger. It was so large that we estimated it was only about 2 miles from us. But in reality, when we flew to the scene, it was actually 14 miles.
What did you do?
Well, we were practicing our search procedures already, so we had done our pre-search checklist, and we're all set up to go. So typically something like this, very unusual, never seen anything of this nature. We immediately proceed to the direction of what was now the smoke bellowing up from the ocean. As we approached the scene, we could see that the ocean was ablaze. A football field-sized area was ablaze, flames about 12 to 15 feet. As we approached around the periphery, we could see that there was debris in the water. One of our helicopters arrived on scene just prior to us, and they observed also other burning particles falling from the sky.
Clear up for us, if you will, this report of someone having heard Mayday, Mayday.
Well, when we fly, we are required to monitor aviation frequencies, emergency frequencies, and we did not hear a Mayday. I understand that the Coast Guard did receive a Mayday on Marine band frequencies, on Marine FM frequencies.
From a
so
vessel?
I would suspect it would be a vessel on the surface. That's correct.
And the dropping of these flares?
Dropping of the flares was to illuminate the surface for the Coast Guard vessels, the other ships on scene last night. There was upwards of 100 ships, fishing boats, whatever, pleasure craft out there assisting the Coast Guard. Additionally, we illuminated the surface for helicopters and other aircraft in the area.
Excuse me, these bugs are becoming very aggressive and they're biting us, but how were you able to maintain enough air control so that there wasn't a second tragedy?
Excellent question, because when something like this occurs, you always get the curious onlookers. There was a Piper aircraft out there. There was a Jet Ranger helicopter. At one time, I counted 7 aircraft within a 5 nautical mile area.
5 miles?
That's correct.
My goodness.
And that's one of our primary jobs, is to exercise command and control as we execute the SAR. And it was very congested, and we transmitted in the blind for aircraft not involved in the search effort to vacate the area. So that's always a concern in something of this nature.
And finally, how low could you fly to see what you saw?
We were down as low as 500 feet. However, our H-60 helicopter was down at 50 feet and just basically in a forward hover, so he was able to get a much better picture of what was on the surface.
Colonel William Stratmeyer, thanks for tolerating the bugs, the lights, and maybe you can get some sleep this night.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Back to the anchor desk.
Thanks, Bernie. Well, now to give you some details about the airplane that crashed, the Boeing 747-100 model entered service in 1970. The TWA jet that went down yesterday was 25 years old and was reportedly one of the airline's original 747s. The Boeing 747 can carry up to 452 passengers, but there were only 230 people on board TWA Flight 800, including 18 crew members. Now, to get a bit more perspective on the crash, we're joined by Aaron Gelman. He's the director of the Transportation Center at Northwestern University. Mr. Gelman is also a member of the FAA Research, Engineering, and Development Advisory Committee. Mr. Gelman, thank you for joining us. Let me ask you about what we've been hearing. Fireball, you just heard the pilot saying 2 fireballs coming down from the sky, big fireballs. The report that radar image disappeared from the screen. What does that tell you?
Well, that alone doesn't tell us much, except that the radar image disappeared very suddenly. I mean, really suddenly. It may mean that the airplane broke very quickly into very small pieces, so that the radar return was not present. That would certainly suggest that there was some explosive force that was applied either within the airplane or outside it to break it up very quickly. And it's doubtful that the airplane would break up in such a way as to disappear from radar completely very quickly if it was merely a structural, not merely, but a structural flaw. It would probably have to be an external force, either from inside the cabin or otherwise. But the fireballs, I think, also pose an interesting question, namely, was the airplane did it come to grief at a much higher altitude than those fireballs developed? Were those fireballs, in fact, secondary or even tertiary effects of what happened at some other time, earlier time, and at a higher altitude? I've not heard anyone talk about the difference in altitude, the maximum altitude the aircraft reached on the one hand, and the altitude at which these large, highly visible fireballs appeared. From what we heard earlier, the airplane reached something over 13,000 feet, but people seem to be, from what we've been told, quite convinced. The credible witnesses, the pilots, both military and civil, who were in the air and near it at the time, seemed to be quite convinced it was around 8,000 feet or so that the fireballs erupted. What happened to bring the airplane down from 14,000 feet all the way down to that level before the highly visible fireballs developed? But I think with all of...
Let me just interrupt and ask
you,
what is it that investigators are looking for now in the debris that they are retrieving from the area? Or is it in the radar and the testimony of eyewitnesses? What is it that's going to tell the story here?
Well, there are all these teams at NTSB sends out to look at various aspects of these matters, and they all come together and integrate what they learn and perform a highly skilled, highly integrated analysis after the fact. But let's talk about the debris a minute. one of the things that they're looking for in the debris is the pattern of breakup of the airplane. You know, what broke up first, what came second, and so forth. They're also looking, of course, for any evidence of an explosive force from the residual chemistry that would be on the parts of the aircraft. There's no question but that the NTSB, in my judgment, there's no question that they will find the answer to this crash. This crash will be very definitely, the cause will be determined.
Aaron, let me just ask you once again, Aaron Gelman, is there any precedent for a 747 just exploding suddenly in this manner?
Well, I don't know about in this manner because we really don't know the manner of the breakup. We don't know the failure mode as it's referred to. At least I don't, and I don't think the NTSB knows yet. But of course you had Lockerbie, where an airplane came apart very quickly, and you had the 747 of Air India that came to grief from an explosion from a bomb planted aboard off the coast of Ireland before that.
But both of those were bombs.
Yes, both of those are bombs. I know of no case where a 747 has come apart in this fashion, except for those two incidents.
Last question, unless there's an important point you want to make here.
Well, there is one point I would like to make, and that is, we shouldn't rush to judgment. This afternoon, I was talking with a number of people who are qualified aviation safety people around the country, and we were kicking around different scenarios that might cause the result we see. And we came up with many more than a half a dozen, all, I think, equally credible. What's the point? The point is that there could be any number of different scenarios here. We need to be very patient and let the NTSB do its work, and don't make any decisions about what happened until this work is done. They are highly competent, highly dedicated people, and coupled with the FAA and the airlines and the airline pilots and everybody with an interest in competence in this area, you can believe they will get to the bottom of this one.
Wise words of advice, and of course, at the same time, it's understandable that people are very anxious to get to the bottom of what happened.
So are we who are in the field.
Aaron Gelman, we thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Lyndon?
Still to come, guarding the games. In the wake of the TWA crash, how secure will the Olympics be? Should more precautions be taken? We'll have a live report when we come back.
At Everin Securities, we thought it was about time for an investment securities firm that could bend and shape their services to fit your needs. After all, our employees are owners with a vested interest in your success.
Ramada is a nice place. Holiday Inn is a nice place. But when you stay 4 nights at Ramada, you can order one of over 100 Republic Picture videos absolutely free. Here, you'll get 4 nights older. So you can go home with a great personality or no personality. And maybe that's why last year 23 million people chose Ramada over Holiday Inn. All things being equal, we're better. So call 1-800-2-RAMADA.
There you
You know what, Grandpa?
What?
Oh, Mommy said that Grandma's pizza will make your heart burn.
My heartburn. Oh, heartburn. Well, your mommy doesn't know about my secret weapon for heartburn. Pepsid AC. See, I always take one before I eat your grandma's pizza.
So your heart won't burn?
Not even if I put green peppers all over the whole thing.
Green peppers, you eat those things?
Yes.
I like anchovies.
You can be heartburn-free with Pepsid AC.
Everywhere we look, we are inspired by what we see. These inspirations are the basis for the things we create. The ideas we return to the world. Samsung. The world inspires us.
When the night has come and the land is dark and the moon is the only light we'll see. Though I won't,
Feeling safe, being secure.
though I won't,
It's why more families rely on Buick LeSabre than any other full-size sedan. Peace of mind from LeSabre.
Say, if you like cheese, but not the fat and cholesterol of cheese, please try my delicious Smart Beef fat-free slices. Serve them cold or grill them. Either way, they have a great cheddar taste. Smart Beef, 0 fat, 0 cholesterol, 0 lactose.
The crash of TWA Flight 800 has increased security concerns in Atlanta, where the Centennial Olympic Games are scheduled to open tomorrow night. CNN Special Assignment reporter Art Harris now joins us with an update. Art?
Lyndon, here inside the Olympic ring, security officials in Atlanta have watched the events in New York with sadness and concern as to how these tragic events, this crash, will affect them in Atlanta. We talked to those guarding the games today to see if they're making any changes as a result of the tragedy. They're on horseback, in the air, on foot, looking for bombs and bad guys, trying to sniff out any trouble. Seek. Part of a highly visible security force, 25,000 strong, guarding the games here in Atlanta. And on the day after the TWA crash, one day before the Olympics, they say it's business as usual. There's no reason to change a security plan 6 years in the making.
Certainly, this is early on with this situation, and there's nothing to suggest that there is any kind of correlation between the crash and the Olympic Games at this point.
At Atlanta's airport, security was already tight, but they did add more people on patrol. Federal, state, and local law enforcement tell CNN they're at such a high state of readiness, they're only making minor changes daily, just tinkering. And that's the way it will stay unless the TWA crash is ever tied to terrorism. But, says this Air Force MP on loan to Atlanta, they could get tougher on the street if they have to.
We could start checking people's passes thoroughly and, having weapons and making everybody feel uncomfortable. That's not really what the spirit of the game is about.
And Olympic visitors had the spirit. They certainly weren't worried about the TWA crash or terrorism.
I haven't felt skittish at all.
Everybody's watching here, and the rest of the country is just not, I don't want to say unprotected, but not as carefully guarded as Atlanta. I feel safe here.
Officials say she has every reason to feel comfortable, that there's been no credible threat of terror against the Olympics. And they feel that with the largest peacetime security force in American history guarding the games, they're ready for almost anything. But if TWA Flight 800 does turn out to be a victim of terror, they'll take another look to see how they can do even more. Art Harris, live in Atlanta.
Art, thank you very much. Judy?
As Art just said, on this eve of the Olympics, the plan was for the world to celebrate the spirit of the games, but the week has taken a tragic turn. We'll have some closing thoughts from CNN's Bruce Morton just ahead.
I read the other day that a large asteroid recently just barely missed the planet Earth. And they said that if it had hit, the explosion would have been like taking all the nuclear weapons from the U.S. and Russia, putting them in one pile, and blowing them up. In spite of this, NASA has decided to keep its search for other giant asteroids at its current meager level.
Time, the world's most interesting magazine.
In today's business world, it's not uncommon to shell out a significant investment only to come up empty. That's why Fortune is giving you a free shot at success. No tricks. Just call now and you'll get 3 issues of Fortune free. That means a free look at the most insightful and compelling business publication of our time. If Fortune isn't for you, simply cancel and pay nothing. The 3 free issues are yours to keep. But if you like what you see, you'll save over 50% off the newsstand price on your special trial subscription. That's 15 more issues, 18 in all, for just $2.19 an issue. Call now, and with your paid subscription, you'll also get the Fortune Portfolio, absolutely free. The Fortune Portfolio is a handsome briefcase with a full-function calculator, a telephone address book, a handy writing set, and convenient pockets. It's perfect for business trips and seminars. And best of all, it's yours free. Call now for your free look at Fortune. You'll enjoy over 50% savings on your free trial subscription. You'll get the Fortune Portfolio free. And even if you decide Fortune isn't for you, you'll get to keep your free issues. You just can't lose. Get 3 free issues, over 50% savings, and the Fortune Portfolio free. Call now.
Alzheimer's disease is the loss of memory. It gets so bad that they may not recognize their son, their daughter, their wife, their husband. But the real need is to stop the progressive nature of the disease. These are our hopes. It's not a cure, but if a woman can recognize her grandson or a husband can go for a walk with his wife, I think we've made real progress.
Tragedy compels us to grasp for perspective, and Bruce Morton reminds us of a very basic human need.
We were supposed to come together this week to celebrate youth and strength and speed. We were supposed, if we thought of sand and oceans, to think of kids and summer sweetness. Now that's all changed, and what has brought us together is a dark sea, one more unexplained and heavy loss. Especially heavy in Montoursville, Pennsylvania, where 16 kids and 5 sponsors were bound for France. Principal Don Chandler put his head in his hands. But loss and grief and fear for people everywhere.
I felt sorrow for the people, but it was a pain of fear, too.
I'm not flying for a long time. I think that they need to get a grip on this. That's what I think.
We remembered, how could we not remember, Oklahoma City.
In Oklahoma, sometimes a guy was sitting at one desk and another guy was sitting at another desk, and then he turned around a second later, one guy was gone and the other guy survived. There's no explanation. And to try to understand why somebody was on this particular flight at this certain time, you know, no one can understand things like that.
A Greek poet wrote, "Pain, which cannot forget, falls drop by drop upon the heart, until in the end, against our will, comes wisdom through the awful grace of God." But we have no wisdom yet, only the pain, and the vision of a dark sea full of death and grief. Bruce Morton, CNN, Washington.
And here in East Mauritius, off the coast, 9 miles behind me, out there in the darkness, the search continues. I'm Bernard Shaw. Judy, Lyndon?
Thanks, Bernie. Lyndon, these stories never get any easier to
They
tell.
don't.
They certainly don't. CNN will bring you in just a few moments a briefing from the National Transportation Safety Board, and we'll continue with our coverage of this tragedy.
And we will also bring you more comprehensive coverage at 10 p.m. Eastern Time on The World Today, and when events warrant, we will break into our live programming. For now, I'm Lyndon Soles.
And I'm Judy Woodruff. Good night.
This is the place to turn for television's most reliable coverage of business and financial news. This is CNN.
This week on TCI Pay-Per-View, don't miss the critically acclaimed performances of Nicolas Cage and Elizabeth Shue in Leaving Las Vegas. Next, Burt Reynolds and Angie Dickinson are a charming but deeply twisted couple in The Maddening. Also this week, Robert De Niro and Sharon Stone are riding high with the mob in Casino. Then, Jean-Claude Van Damme is the only one who can save an arena full of fans from a terrorist bomb in sudden death. They're all in your living room this week on TCI Pay-Per-View. Call and order today. Placido Domingo. Luciano Pavarotti.
Experience the magic of the Three Tenors in their only live television performance of the year.
Saturday, July 20th on TCI pay-per-view. Order today.
Standard TV and appliance refrigerator price split is going on now. Hundreds of refrigerators to choose from. Compact under-the-counter models to huge 48-inch built-ins. Side-by-side. Freezers on the top or bottom, plus ice and water through the door. All refrigerators on sale at Standard TV and Appliance. Save on KitchenAid, Whirlpool, GE, Amana, Sub-Zero, Frigidaire, and more. But hurry, Standard TV and Appliance's 4-day refrigerator price split ends Saturday. Standard TV and Appliance at 48th and Southeast Woodstock.
We're near the end of our first ever summer sell down at the Ron Tonkin Toyota Superstore. That's right, just a few days left of special prices on new Toyotas brought in for the final days of this sale. We've marked huge savings on everything in stock. That includes our most popular models like Camry, Tercel, Tacoma, and the all-new RAV4. If you've been waiting for the right Toyota and the right price, don't wait any longer. Get into the summer sell down today while selection is great at Ron Tonkin Toyota out 122nd Way.
This is CNN. We're always here. No matter how difficult the story, no matter how remote the place, shedding light on world events 24 hours a day. CNN, CNN International, Headline News, CNN FM, and CNN Interactive. Bringing news and information to 500 million people in over 200 countries. It's how the world gets enlightened. The networks of CNN, the world's news leader.
What happens on this day will set it apart from all others. The unexpected and the extraordinary. Now.
Live from Los Angeles, here's Larry King.
Good evening and welcome to a sad edition of Larry King Live covering the tragedy of TWA Flight 800. There's a briefing scheduled shortly by the National Transportation Safety Board. We've got lots of guests coming, but first let's go right up to Long Island and Bernie Shaw. Bernie, isn't one of the more difficult aspects of covering something like this is that at this point it's all speculation?
Well, you try to pull back from speculation, but definitely it is extremely difficult because as an observer, you want to report accurate information, and you really feel and suffer the heartache that the officials, the authorities, and certainly the families go through under these kinds of conditions. The Coast Guard is still out there 9 miles behind me in the darkness, searching for wreckage, searching for body parts they're finding. They're searching for the voice data recorder from TWA Flight 800. It's very, very frustrating. And with our TV lights, of course, you'll see when you talk with Governor Pataki, and even now, some of the most aggressive bugs I've ever seen are attacking us. But that's minor compared to this tragedy and the magnitude of it.
Bernie, will searching go throughout the night?
It will, Larry. It will go throughout the night. And they will continue doing what they've done for the past several hours. Refrigerator trucks have brought the remains. They're being taken to the Suffolk County Medical Examiner. The wreckage is being taken and laid out on the floor of a Grumman hangar, not too far from here. And these officials are relentless. They're dogged. They're extremely exhausted, and they're pressing on.
We also have, as you mentioned earlier in one of your interviews, conflicting or concurring investigations, right? FBI and NTSB, do they run into each other?
Well, no, they're not running into each other. I can report to you that just a short while ago, the assistant FBI director was ferried through and around and over the search site. So the FBI is very much from the very top on down. Out here at the scene, there's two parallel investigations. The National Transportation Safety Board is pursuing its investigation. The Federal Bureau of Investigation certainly heavily involved in sifting through the wreckage as it's brought ashore and talking to eyewitnesses. Some of the eyewitnesses who were on the scene this time last night, have been questioned for hours. The FBI is being very meticulous about the information it's gathering.
Bernie, thank you. We'll let you get out of those lights for a while. And as soon as that NTSB press conference starts, we'll get right back to you. Thanks, Bernie Shaw. Now to our studios in New York, the mayor of New York City, Rudy Giuliani, who has been on this scene. Have you had any sleep, Mayor?
No, not last night.
Would you comment, please, because we've heard reports all day about your criticism of the airline. What were you angry, or are you angry at?
Well, I was very upset that I didn't notify people in a timely enough way. It took 18, 20 hours for them to do the checking that was needed to determine who was on the flight, and that work could have been done in an hour or two. And unfortunately, they sent home the person who was in charge at about 2 o'clock in the morning because he thought he needed sleep last night. Of course, no one else who was working on this got sleep last night. So I was quite disturbed that they didn't produce the list from which you could verify the people on this flight until about 4 o'clock this afternoon, and that's just unacceptable. That should have been done sometime last night. Families are going through enough heartbreak and enough fear and worry. We can't remove that for them, but we can make things easier, not harder for them. And in this particular instance, TWA at the upper management level was making things harder for them. There were a lot of very good people from TWA working with the families, working with the people that were concerned, but at the upper management level, they were non-existent at Kennedy Airport last night.
Mayor, what's your role in a tragedy like this? Is there a specific role you have to play?
Well, we did two things. We sent a large number of people who are skilled in dealing with trauma and from the Community Assistance Unit and the Police Department and the Fire Department to Kennedy Airport to try to help the Port Authority, which worked very cooperatively and very well, to deal with as many of the people that would show up there as possible, and there were altogether about 60 families that showed up. And then we sent emergency service personnel to Suffolk County to assist the Coast Guard. There are 4 New York City Police Department boats, one a very large floating center. We've sent 30 divers from the New York Police Department who are out there helping, and the head of the mayor's emergency management services is out there. He's been out there and up all night assisting under the leadership of the Coast Guard and Suffolk County Police.
This is the toughest of all jobs for an official, is it not? I mean,
the worst
anything
part,
else pales?
There's, no, I can't remember a 24-hour period worse than this one since I've been the mayor. Particularly this morning when all the families came from Montoursville, Pennsylvania. This is a high school in which all of the youngsters, or about 17 or 18 of the youngsters there, were going to France. They're part of the French club, and they were going to spend, I believe it was, 2 or 3 weeks in France, and their parents had just sent them off. For many of them, their first trip overseas, their first trip to France. And then within a few hours of the children leaving, they hear that the plane has crashed, and they took buses. It's about a 3-hour bus trip in the middle of the night to Kennedy Airport, and when they arrived, they were clutching the photographs of their children. And I have 2 children, and this is sort of the nightmare that a parent lives with, and to see it work itself out is a real tragedy.
We have a couple of minutes left, Mr. Mayor. The President of the United States today cautioned against quick speculation, rush to judgment, which, as you remember, happened with Oklahoma City.
He's absolutely right to do that. I talked to President Clinton today. He was concerned enough about making sure that everything was working that he called both me and Governor Pataki to make certain that the federal authorities were working well with the city and the state, and they are and were. But I think his words are absolutely important to remember. People should not prejudge. At this point, the FBI, the police, and all those who are working on this case, it's the Joint Anti-Terrorism Task Force that I work with for some time. And the thing to remember is no one knows yet what happened. We shouldn't prejudge it. And we have the best experts available in the world working on this, and they'll come to an answer, but give them time. And anybody who fuels speculation here is deserving the public and these families who easily can succumb to really being hurt in a situation like this. This is a time for restraint and care in what you say and how you say it, and let the experts do the job of investigating it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's been a trying time, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, Larry.
Mayor Rudy Giuliani. Now back to Long Island, and Governor George Pataki, who I'm sure would agree with the mayor, whatever is in second place to this kind of tragedy for an elected official pales by comparison, right, Governor?
Well, Larry, that's right. I've never experienced anything like this, particularly meeting the families, and I hope we never experience anything like this again.
Are people being a problem? Are there a lot of sightseers trying to come by and park along the highways, or are they being good?
No, Larry, they've been very helpful. Last night there were more than 20 ships out helping the Coast Guard to try to see if we could find any survivors and helping to recover bodies. And today the message has been the opposite. It's been to stay away, and only if you find some debris that you think might be associated with the tragedy to call 911. And the people have been very responsive. They've kept out of the way. The volunteers and support organizations have been there, but the effort has been one of very strong cooperation at all levels.
The mayor gave us his role. What's the governor's role?
Well, the National Guard is obviously playing a very important role here. We have state police divers ready to go into the waters. That probably won't happen until tomorrow morning. The state police are transporting the debris when it's brought to shore to our two facilities here. One, a hangar that is large enough that they probably can begin the process of reconstructing the 747 here. And we do have the best experts in the world. The FBI has its forensic experts and its teams here. We have experts who were at Lockerbie here as well. And we don't know the answer, but we will get the answer.
The president spoke to the mayor and he spoke to you today, right?
Yes, he did. He called to make sure.
Said?
Yes, he wanted to make sure that the federal government was doing all they could to be of assistance, and they have. We've had just tremendous cooperation among the federal and state and local forces. The city police have been very helpful, and given the fact that this is a tragedy of immense proportions, the response has been all that you could ask.
Everybody warns against speculation, and no one knows the danger of that more than the news business. But everyone, or not everyone, a lot of people are logically saying this is probably sabotage. Is that the thinking in Governor Pataki's mind? Probably.
Well, Larry, I don't want to speculate. I don't think
At
it
all.
helps. Not really. The FBI is treating this as a potential criminal site. They're making tremendous efforts to make sure that evidence is collected and protected. They are investigating witnesses. They are very, very on top of this. And I think there's every justification for the FBI to treat this as a potential criminal site, and they're taking all the proper steps.
Now, what happens now the next few days? And the psychologists tell us that this sets in a little late for the families. Are you staying on the scene? What's your role now on?
Absolutely, Larry. I can tell you it was just devastating to meet with the families this afternoon, and the grief and the tragedy they've gone through is something we really can't comprehend. Many of them are still at Kennedy but want to come out here to Long Island to visit the site, to be near their loved ones, and the National Transportation Safety Board is just discouraging that. But we've arranged facilities. We have mental health experts and counselors here because we know at some point the loved ones are going to seek closure, and they're going to want to come out here, and we're going to be here. New Yorkers are caring, compassionate people. We've been there today. We're going to continue to be there for those families.
The mayor, as you know, was critical of the airline. Do you share that criticism?
I do. Mayor Giuliani and I met with TWA officials earlier this afternoon. It was incomprehensible to me that more than 12 hours after the catastrophe, people still couldn't get an answer as to whether or not their son or parent was in fact on the plane. And a lot of it has been straightened out since, but certainly there was a lot more that I believe could have been done sooner on behalf of the family.
Thank you for joining us, Governor. We appreciate the time.
Thank you, Larry.
Governor George Pataki, the governor of New York. Lots more to come on Larry King Live. Don't go away. When we come back, the press conference of the National Transportation Safety Board. Stay there.
Small businesses are spreading the good news from Sprint Business.
It's Friday. Are you free?
Get a full year of Fridays free for your business. Call 1-800-598-5000 and get long distance on Fridays free, only from Sprint Business.
New Alpine Lace, fat-free turkey. No fat, no fat, no fat, no fat. No fat. No fat. Ask for new Alpine Lace, fat-free turkey at your deli. No fat.
Sooner or later, chances are you'll find yourself looking for a home out of town. Moving, vacationing, planning for retirement. Whatever your reasons, Better Homes and Gardens can help you get there with our free Homes Guidebook. It's filled with full-color photos of properties across the U.S., Canada, and Puerto Rico, so you can compare
This is CNN Breaking News.